It's day 24 of the 31-Day Safer Pilot Challenge, and today, 3 things I do beyond the checklist.
Cardio, power back, 10 recent flaps, perfect. Landing still starts with perfect pattern.
What is happening, MzeroA Nation? So good to see you all again. The finish line is in sight. Who is 24 for 24? Check in the comments down below. And when you check in, I'd like you to check in with something you do beyond the checklist. On pre-flight, my 3 I'm sharing today are pre-flight related items, but it could be on start, on shutdown, on cruise flight, on climb out. Maybe share the type of airplane you're flying to, because everyone's a little bit different, but I want to use these comments, this thread, as something student pilots and professional pilots, myself included, can read and say, oh, that's a good idea, right? I should think about something like that, or ask somebody if that would apply to my aircraft. And some things you do, like we get this checklist, and so often we just rotely go through the checklist. What are the things we do beyond it? I'm gonna share with you 3 here today, but before I get to that, please don't forget, on the 31st, to be 31 for 31, there is no 8 a.m. video. There is an 8 p.m. Eastern Time live stream. It'll be right here on YouTube, right here on Facebook, wherever you're watching this, 8 p.m. Eastern on the 31st. I believe that's a Wednesday night. So just please make sure you are subscribed on YouTube, you like on Facebook, so you the page, so you get those alerts as soon as we go live as well. So let's talk about it here. 3 things I do beyond the checklist, and the first is this. Related to the oil, we open up the oil and hopefully the oil cap is loose. Who's ever flown an airplane after the Incredible Hulk? You know what I mean? Have you ever got out there and like you need 3 hands and a wrench and a rag because the Incredible Hulk tightened the oil down? That happens. So please don't be the Incredible Hulk. Just finger tight is fine. It actually tightens itself as you fly, and it heats up and everything else. That's why it gets so tight sometimes. Finger tight. But you check the oil, and so often I find student pilots and professional pilots alike check for the one thing the checklist says, which is quantity. Oh, 6 quarts, I'm good. But do you look at the quality? You see, do you have 6 quarts of really dirty oil, or do you have 6 quarts that's so new you can barely even see it on the dipstick, right? Because it's such clean, new oil. It's not just about the quantity, it's about the quality of the oil as well. I'm happy you have 6 quarts of oil. That's great, and you check right on the checklist, or your POH says 6 quarts. That's great. But if that is just black on black and dirty, that oil is not able to do its several jobs. Several jobs meaning cooling, lubricating, cleaning. It did its job of cleaning, but when so much dirt is in there, there's only so much more cleaning it can really do. It can't hold any more dirt. So just keep that in mind. It's one thing to have 6 quarts, but if it is nasty, kind of black on black oil, you might want to mention to somebody, go, hey, the quantity is good, but the quality of this, like, we'll be okay flying today, but if I was going on a long cross country, I might want to have an oil change beforehand. Before we depart for Oshkosh every year, first thing we do is get an oil change on that long of a trip, regardless of what the oil quantity and quality actually look like. Just change it anyways. We're going to put 25 hours on this thing, so we always change it. Number 2 is a different one. It's something I've been teaching our online ground school members recently because one of our amazing online ground school members brought this up. She was at her flight school. I won't name names, but she knows who she is, and the ground school members know who she is. And she observed, she didn't experience this, she observed someone have an engine fire on start. It was a cold engine start, and they just overprimed it. So tip number 2 is this. When you are pre-flighting, are you observing the temperature of the engine? That seems a little silly, but every time, especially in a flight school environment, like I'll rent, I mean, the Cirruses you see me flying, I rent those Cirruses. I don't own those Cirruses. And one thing I'll do, because it's a rental and a flight school environment, I'll always go over and I'll touch the cowling. And if it is hot, well, I know I may have a hot start up against me. Versus if it's cold, I'll even go into the scheduling software and go, wow, it's been quite cold and this airplane hasn't flown in 2 days. So I treat those starts very differently. Anybody ever have an airplane that's just a pain to hot start? Well, oftentimes airplanes are a pain to hot start because it just came back from a flight. You pre-flight it, you hop in and you follow the normal start procedure, which is give it this much prime, give it this much gas, this much, boost pump, whatever it is. And a hot engine doesn't want more fuel. A hot engine just wants air, really, to get started. And you end up flooding it, and that's what makes hot start so difficult. The opposite of that is true too, though. You come out and it's, freezing, let's say, and many of you have those types of conditions right now watching this video. It's freezing and the airplane sat for 2 days and you never got it on a Tannis heater or a Red Dragon or whatever the heater is that you use, and you try to start it. That thing is not going to start, right? You need to get out there early, get it plugged in the Tannis heater, get the Red Dragon blowing some heat over those cylinders, whatever it is, you need to do that ahead of time. So you need to be thinking ahead. So when I'm pre-flighting, I'm thinking, wow, this thing just came in from a flight. This will be a hot start. I'm not going to prime it like the checklist says, and it'll probably start just fine. Or, hey, this is a cold start. Let's get it on a heater, and I might give it a little extra prime and some time and be patient with it compared to what the checklist says. So that's just how my mind is really working, especially in these winter months and summer's coming. By hot start, I don't mean it's August. By hot start, I mean you're in a flight school environment, the airplane just flew for a lesson, came back in, and the engine is hot. Like you can't even check the oil, it's so hot. The cap's too hot to even check. That's what I mean when I say a hot start. So and talk to your instructor about this, because every airplane has its hot start quirks or techniques, and its cold start quirks and techniques as well. Tip number 3 here. Many of you have heard this if you've been following MzeroA for any amount of time. It's the dummy check. What do I mean by the dummy check? The dummy check is after the pre-flight is done, the checklist is done, I do one final walk around the airplane because I don't want to look like a dummy. And I've looked like a dummy before. What do I mean? You don't have to admit to this unless you want to. Who's ever left chocks on and started the airplane? Who's ever left a wing or a tail tied down and started the airplane? Left a fuel cap off, an oil door open. I've gotten in the airplane before. I sit in there, I get my seatbelt on, I look up and I go, look at the cowling, oil door's open. Unbuckle, head sets off, everything else, back out and close the oil door. I don't want to look like a dummy. So I do a dummy check. Tie downs, chocks, caps, all these little things. I once had a student, this is, 17 years ago now. I once had a student leave their keys and their cell phone on the tail of, this is back in the 512 Romeo days. And neither of us caught it. We taxied the whole way. Actually, it was on the fuselage because it slid back. So it was like kind of above where like the ELT antenna is. And we went to take off and we hear, boonk. I said, what was that? And my student goes, that was my keys and my cell phone. They remembered after they heard the noise. We flew back around, landed a little long so we didn't hit it, and it was a pilot-controlled airport. We ran out and got it, and of course the phone was broken and everything else. But you don't want to look like a dummy, is my point. If you'd be so humble to maybe share in the comments down below times you've maybe been on that dummy side of things. Listen, we learn from it. We learn from each other's mistakes as well. So 3 things I do beyond the checklist. Look at the oil quality. Note your engine temperature when you arrive at the airport or even before. If you have the ability to get somebody and put the heater on it early if it's cold, or you can do it remotely from your phone. And the third is do a dummy check as well. But there's so much more than 3. I want to use this comment thread as something powerful that we can see what others are doing out there beyond what your checklist says, above and beyond. That's how we pursue mastery in aviation. So I'm really excited about reading these comments. So put a lot of thought, put a lot of love into them. Check in down below that you are 24 for 24, and let me know what you do beyond the checklist. Have a blessed, abundant, outstanding rest of your day, and most importantly, remember, a good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you.